Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our special council meeting of December the 17th to go over our budget. With us tonight, we have our co-city manager, Jonathan Schechter, Councillor David Torgman, Councillor Oren Sabag, Councillor Mike Cohen. Councillor Ruth Kovac is away, but she wishes everybody well. Councillor Dita Burku. We have Councillor Sidney Benizri, Councillor Mitch Kajavsky. And Councillor Early is standing up right over there. We have our city manager, Tanya Abramovich, and our associate city manager, Nadia DeFuria. And before question period, in order for you to have questions, we're going to present the budget. So I will leave it to Councillor Early to present the budget.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say it's a pleasure to be here. Je vais faire la présentation en anglais, mais s'il y a des questions, vous pouvez demander en français. If anyone has any questions in French, please feel free to ask as well. And I'll try to do the whole presentation and then take questions at the end. You should all have a copy. If you don't, there's some copies in the back of the room of the presentation that are available in English and French, and it's also available online at the city's website at côte-saint-luc.org/finance, and again available in English and French. So first I'll begin with the budget process, with the summary of the presentation. So basically we'll go over a few things, including the budget process. I'll go do an overview of the 2019 budget. We'll talk about the operating budget. We'll discuss the tax rates, the capital investment priorities for 2019, and the capital investment projects for 3 years for 2019, 2020, 2021, and of course end with a question period. Just to clarify for those who were here last year, so last year we did the presentation in 2 steps. Last year in December we had the capital project budget, and in January we adopted the operating budget. That was partly because there were changes, and it was partly due to the election and partly due to the late presentation of the agglomeration budget, which caused us to push back the operating budget. But this year, of course, they'll be all presented at the same time. So I'm going to go through the budget building process. So I'll start at the top. So in June, we review the 2018 budget to get a sense as to where we are, and we start doing the budget forecast. In July, we discuss the guiding principles for the 2019 budget. We go to September, we start doing projections of salaries, the different contracts. By October, the different departments, such as Public Works, Finance, Engineering, and so on, come up with their department budgets. November, we finalize the 3-year capital projects, and we also finalize the operating budget. We come up with our finalized tax rates, which we did a few weeks ago, and then in December, we do a review of the operating budget just to make sure there's no errors and make sure that everything is ready. And of course, we're up to today, where we're going to hopefully approve the budget. And on December 19th, we'll be approving the tax rates. So some of the guiding principles. The main one, of course, is to make sure we have a balanced budget, which we have, and every year since being elected 13 years ago, we've managed to have either a small or medium-sized surplus in the end due to good financial constraints. We ensure the tax rate covers the operating expense and minimizing the increase for taxpayers, and I'll go over the tax rate in a few minutes. We want to ensure, of course, long-term viability of the city, make sure that we're sustaining the services, and if anything, trying to grow the services by trying to offer more, but at the same time at a reasonable cost. We're trying to optimize grants. We've gotten over the years many grants from the federal government, from the provincial government, and actually there's a slide a bit later on that shows some of the different grants we've gotten over the last few years. And we try, when possible, to look at reducing our debt service. So what the city used to do in the past was we would borrow money before a project was finalized, before we actually knew the cost of the project, and sometimes we'd end up borrowing too much money. What we try to do now is wait till we have the final cost of the project, whether it be a cost of a vehicle or whether it be a cost of a park. So we wait till we have those costs so we can borrow the right amount and not over-borrow and, of course, spend extra money on financing and interest. So a few more of our guiding principles. We want to make sure, of course, that we have adequate funds for new upgrades to city facilities. This year, for example, you'll see there are major upgrades to the outdoor pool, the Park Haven pool, and upgrades to the arena, which will begin towards the end of March, April. We want to ensure that, of course, any new services are for the good of the community, and we want to make sure and work that the budget process is transparent and efficient, and of course that we continue to monitor it, and that's why the audit committee meets on a regular basis, roughly every 6 weeks throughout the year, to make sure that every department is doing their budgeting properly. And of course, we continue to ensure that we're offering very high quality services thanks to the amazing team we have in the city. So this is a standard slide, just to remind everyone. On the left side, we have the local city services. On the right side, we have the agglomeration. The agglomeration services, of course, are funded partly through the taxes. Roughly 40% of the taxes that come into Côte Saint-Luc go to cover the agglomeration services, which include police, fire, municipal court, public transportation, the STM, and water treatment and distribution. On the left side are the services covered by the local city, so the city administration, public works, roads, water infrastructure, waste management, public safety and security, EMS, recreation, library, the ACC, and of course covering our debt. And part of that is covering the CMM, which is the Montreal Metropolitan Community. So now I'm going to go through a general overview of the 2019 budget. So this, first of all, is the last year of the current tax roll. So towards the end of 2019, roughly September of 2019, we'll be getting the new tax roll, which will come into effect on January 1st, 2020. For the current tax roll, we did not spread the tax increase, or spread the valuation increase over 3 years. Obviously, we have to wait to find out what the next increase is, and once we have that information in roughly September of 2019, we'll share as much information with residents at that point. Our average tax increase for this year is 1.7%. That is keeping in line with the Conference Board of Canada forecast. It's also actually in line with the increase for the City of Montreal, the average increase for the City of Montreal. And it's actually the average of our last 5 increases. If we look at the last 5 years, it's been 1.7, which has been either in line or below the rate of inflation as predicted by the Conference Board of Canada, which is the indicator that we use and the City of Montreal uses as well. So total increase in revenue is 6.84, so that includes increase in tax, that also includes increase in revenue from other sources, and the increase in budget overall is 3.19%. And we'll go through the different departments in the budget in a moment. Some major capital works, as I mentioned earlier, so the biggest one that'll be coming up in the next year is Kerwin Park. We had a consultation this week, Thursday. I have to admit I didn't have a chance to attend, but I heard there were very good ideas, and Councillor Kajavsky and the Recreation Department and Engineering are working on ensuring that that's going to be a beautiful park. As mentioned, the arena and the Confederation Annex, which I'll talk a bit later in the presentation, and some general road resurfacing and sidewalk repair, and I'll share some more data on that later on in the presentation as well. So this is, just to show over the last 3 years for the average, so the average property valuation, as mentioned, hasn't changed because we didn't spread for this recent increase. So it's $584,600. So the average increase in taxes for a single-family home is 1.7%, which again is keeping in line with the rate of inflation, and also actually the average of the last 2 years and average of the last 5 years as well. And just for an average home, it represents $111. And from what we understand, compared to some of the other demerged cities, from what we're hearing so far, we are actually lower than most of the demerged cities from the information we have at this point. So in terms of revenue, the vast majority of the revenue for the city of Côte Saint-Luc, as is for most of the smaller cities on the island of Montreal and the province of Quebec, is from taxes. So it represents $63 million of the total $72.8 million. There's some still money from some old local improvement taxes. Compensation in lieu of taxes, that has to do with federal and provincial buildings that are in Côte Saint-Luc. So for example, the post office, the various schools, Mount Sinai Hospital, Maimonides Hospital as well, and some other revenue. So that includes all the revenue from fees that residents pay to use these different services in the Recreation Department. That includes also fines, that includes also building permits and so on. And we'll go through those in more detail in a moment. So revenue from taxes, of the 63 million, about 39.4 million is from residential properties, and again, based on the 1.7% property and water tax increase. Apartment 6 plus is 10.7 million, vacant land, and if you notice the vacant land amount is reducing, is roughly half. Part of that is because every year there's less and less vacant land in Côte Saint-Luc as more of the land is being built on and more developments are going on up in the city of Côte Saint-Luc, which is a nice thing. Non-residential properties, 9.18, and we still have, just to mention on the bottom, we have a $50,000 reserve for municipal tax provision. So this is in the case where people contest their evaluation. This year, or up to date, it's only been about just under 10,000, about 8,500 for contestations, but there's still actually quite a few that are outstanding, and because we don't know the results of those, we're trying to be conservative by putting a $50,000 provision. If we don't need it, then that money would go back into the operating or into the surplus. Next, I'll go to details of other revenues. So we see here the total is 7.9 million. It's an increase of about 6.8%. Some increases, some decrease. Just to mention a few highlights. So for transfer duties, we estimate 2.65 million, up from 2.2 million. That's the biggest increase. What we've seen over the last few years is there's been significant increases in the transfer duties or welcome tax. So this is the tax that residents or building owners will pay when they purchase a new property. And we feel even with this increase of $450,000, we feel it's still relatively conservative when we compare. It's in line and actually a bit on the low side compared to the average of the last 3-4 years. So where there's a slight decrease, so for recreation, for example, we have a slight decrease because the arena will be closed for most of the 2019 year. Again, it'll be closed from the spring for approximately 12 months. Obviously, we'll figure out once the work starts. So that results in a decrease in revenue on the recreation side. And I'll keep going. So some government grants. These are actually slight increases from last year, so I'm happy. The biggest one is what we get, what's called the redevance. So for every ton of garbage that residents put into, or that the cities put in, there's a certain tax, and cities get back money based on the amount of waste that is diverted. In Côte Saint-Luc, over the last 10 years, we've managed to increase the diversion rate, and we're sending about 33% less garbage to landfill over the last 10, 12 years. I'm very happy about that. And we've actually more than tripled the amount of waste that is diverted. So that is waste either going to organic waste collection or to recycling. The goal, of course, is to continue bringing those numbers even higher. And because of that, we get about $330,000 from the provincial government. We get an additional $217,000 from Recyc Quebec for the amount of material that's recycled, $60,000 from the library for books. The PAD program, that is to help families modernize their homes to make them more wheelchair accessible for those that have physical disabilities. And this is $188,000. That is the interest on the long-term debt. That's partly for projects such as the tech and I believe also for the ACC as well. And we get a small amount from the federal government as well for summer student programs, and every year we try to hire a few summer students, many of whom actually end up working for the city in the end. So this is, again, a rough breakdown. As I mentioned earlier, the vast majority, about 87%, is from taxes. We compare to some of the other cities, both on the island and off the island, and that's comparable data. And in terms of expenses, so if we look, one of the biggest ones is the general administration, and I'll give a breakdown of the general administration a bit later, but just to mention, for those that are comparing this year's to last year's, what you may notice is in previous years we had engineering listed as part of public works. This year we shifted engineering to be part of the general administration, so that's why you'll see it represents a slightly larger percent of the pie. but in talking to our treasurer, we felt it better reflected where engineering fits into the, I guess, the puzzle of Côte Saint-Luc, or the pie of Côte Saint-Luc. So we have the different local expenses. We have public safety, public works, environmental services, recreation culture, library, the ACC, CMM, which is the Montreal Metropolitan Community, debt services, finance costs, and we'll go through each of these each of these will be on a separate slide in a moment. But before I get to that, I want to just go over the agglomeration apportionment. So it represents, including all the different costs, including the water services, the small amount that's left for water meters, the debt for arterial roads, the contribution to the centre-ville or downtown, including all the costs, represents roughly $29.151 million. On the positive side, it represents a small increase from last year of only 0.55%. On the negative side, we had hoped and expected a decrease given the pact that was signed between the demerged cities and the City of Montreal. So I guess we have mixed feelings. And one of the things to mention is the reason, if you look at water, so we play water slightly differently. So the cost of water has gone up over the last few years. It used to be in the range of $800,000. Now it's in the range of 1.3, 1.4 million. That has to do with the fact that they raised the price of water. We used to pay in the vicinity of 10, 12 cents per cubic meter. Now we're paying about 21 cents per cubic meter, but there's been a slight reduction over the years as to the fixed cost of water. So that's why it's somewhat balanced out as well. So now I'll go through the local expenses, and as mentioned, like I said, if you're comparing to last year's presentation, which is also available online, engineering last year was under public works, not under engineering. So in terms of increases, just to share, one of them is for city council. Part of that is, as mandated by provincial law, every city has to have a certain amount for research and support. For Côte Saint-Luc, that works out to approximately $47,000, so that's for research for the city councilors. Even though we feel that we don't necessarily need it, it has to be in there, but the assumption is it won't be used, but like I said, it is added in the budget. In terms of the different departments, just to mention some anomalies or ones to point out. One to mention, so for undistributed administration expenses, you'll see a decrease, and part of that is because during the time when the arena is shut down, there'll be some employees who normally work at the arena that will be working at other tasks. It hasn't yet been finalized what other tasks they'll be doing. So because of that, right now, it's actually a reduction in the undistributed administration expenses. So that is for the blue-collar workers who normally, let's say, would work in the arena. What you also see is we have an increase under employee contribution fringe benefits. That's because of different extra contributions for pension plans, QPP, and other benefits that have increased from last year to this year. So for the next one, local expenses for public safety, which includes EMS, public security, VCOP. So this is a larger increase than we would have liked. We did some studies and realized that we actually had made an error on the budgeting of some salaries last year when calculating. To give an example, with dispatch must be open, as everyone knows, 24 hours a day, so there was a slight calculation error, which leads to a larger increase, but it actually is not, when we compare it to the revised budget for 2018, it's not as large an increase, and there's also an extra employee in there who will be hired in 2019. On the public works side, so we have some increases. Over the last few years, we've managed to work and hiring some extra crews to help with some of the priorities of the city. For example, we hired an extra asphalt crew, 4 people, an extra horticultural crew of 3 people, and an arboriculture crew of 2 people. The goal is to make sure that we are patching the roads, to make sure we're trying to plant trees and trim the trees. Côte Saint-Luc, we've had to cut down, fell many trees because of the emerald ash borer, and every year we're trying to plant trees. For many years we were in a tree deficit. The last few years we've been a tree surplus, I'm happy to say, and of course the goal for next year again is to be in a tree surplus where we're planting more trees than we're cutting down. I'll keep going. On the environmental side, so we have, again, a slight increase when we factor in the water distribution and garbage, although which stayed neutral. On the water purchase side, we have a slight decrease, even though the agglomeration has increased the price per cubic meter of water, partly because of all the work that's been done on sleeving. We've managed to cut down on water that's been wasted, on water that's lost in the system, and of course the goal as we continue to do more sleeving is to reduce the amount of water, and hopefully by encouraging residents to be, let's say, more frugal with their use of water, we'll bring that number down in future years as well. So next is for the aquatic center. So here, just to mention, we have an increase on a significant increase for the ACC. Part of that is because there was a change, or I guess a change that Côte Saint-Luc had to make after speaking to the provincial government with regard to certain employees that were considered consultants. So for example, in the past, the coaches for the swim team, or let's say certain employees who are doing the different aqua fitness and so on, many of them were considered independent consultants, but when we discussed with the provincial government, we realized that they should be officially designated employees, so it basically meant they switched to become employees, but of course it meant that there's offsetting, often there's offsetting revenue on the same side, on the same line items, but basically that accounts for a large increase there. And I guess just to mention, I guess that's the major increase there. I'll keep going. For the Eleanor London Côte Saint-Luc Public Library, 2.5% increase, so which is a reasonable increase. For debt service and finance, so the goal of the city over the last few years has been to try to reduce the amount of money that's been borrowed, and of course to try to cut down on the long-term debt at the same time. So what you see here is a slightly larger capital repayment, but again, this has to do often with the timing of when the bonds come. Some of them come in the middle of the year, some come towards the end of the year, beginning of the year, so it has to do with that as well. And the goal, again, this year for 2018, assuming that we have a small surplus at the end of the year, is to try to allocate some of that money to pay down some debt in advance so that we can, again, reduce long-term our borrowing costs, reduce our interest costs long-term. For CMM, we see a slight decrease from $500,000 to $491,000. Appropriation to the working fund is comparable to last year. We also have a small amount from the water reserve that we allocate, and appropriation for need in the future pension and others. So this, just to clarify, back in, I guess it was around 2008 when the stock markets crashed, it affected our pension fund. Because of that, our actuarial studies were done, and we had to put in about $50,000 per year for the next few years to balance out those losses to make sure there was enough money in the pension fund for all the retirees. And that's, again, standard practice done by all cities, or most cities after that incident. Total expenses, so this is a summary of the expenses. So general administration, again, is one of the larger ones, but it's slightly larger this year when comparing to last year because of the switch of engineering from public works to general administration. We have public safety, public works, water, waste, recreation, culture, library, CMM, debt service, and the agglomeration is, again, the largest overall at just over 40% of the total tax and total budget. Here you just see the same information presented in a pie chart. So again, just a general summary of the operating budget, showing the different key amounts, including the agglomeration apportionment. So this is a review of all the tax rates. So each one is a ratio of the other, but it starts with the residential properties, local tax rate, and the water tax. So the tax rate is 1.1298 for every $100. For apartments 6+, 1.34, vacant land 2.15. For non-residential properties, there are two rates, and the lower rate is for the portion of the property that is below $45 million, and you have the higher rate at the bottom here, so that is for the portion of the property of the non-residential property or commercial property that is over $45 million. And again, this is just a review of a single-family home, what an average tax increase would be. And now we'll switch to the capital projects for 2019. So some of our top priorities, as mentioned, Kerwin Park, which is going to be a beautiful park once it's all done, the Samuel Moscovich Arena, and I guess just to reiterate, so the arena has to be done. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, there's a provincial law that by 2020, every arena in the province of Quebec has to redo their coolant system to meet the new environmental standards. Côte Saint-Luc, of course, is one of those cities that has to do it. And while we're doing that, one of the things that an investment that the city has decided to do is to also cool the Confederation Annex just behind the arena. I think it's going to be a wonderful project, and it'll give, in the end, it'll give residents a second ice surface. The Confederation Annex will be, we estimate, we'll be able to use for several months throughout the year because of the coolant, and it'll allow more people a chance to be outdoors and skating and enjoy the city services. Road resurfacing and sidewalk projects, traffic lights and LEDs, which we'll talk a bit more, replenishing the public works fleet, and I'll go through some of the details of the different projects, and completion of the renovation of the municipal pool, which if you haven't had a chance to see, the mayor has posted some pictures of the work in progress, and hopefully it'll all be done in time for the 2019 summer season. And so with regard to water infrastructure, for the last few years, we've done quite a lot of work. For and I'll show you some numbers in a moment. For 2019, the focus is going to be on the professional services, so we're spending about $400,000, and that'll be to look at which streets are the next ones that need, or which pipes are the next ones that need to be sleeved. And I guess just to mention, what they do is they insert plastic lining or a lining inside that protects the pipe, and it adds, they estimate, between 20 to 50 years to the life of that pipe and cuts down on the water main breaks. So for next year, it's going to be professional services. We are just coming off a tech grant. The tech grant is sponsored by the federal and provincial government through the gas tax. So the current grant is finishing in 2018. We don't yet have all the details for 2019. So usually in the first year of a new gas tax, we don't go that heavy on projects until we know the rules, because the governments change sometimes the priority. So we're still waiting on that, but hopefully we will find out either, well, I was going to say either by the end of 2018, but if not, early 2019, we'll find out the details of those projects. So just to show some data, because I like to share some key numbers. So we've done, so up until the end of 2017, we had done 15,403 meters of water mains that we had sleeved. This past year, we did an extra 2,000, just over 2,000, which represents 17,476 meters of pipes that have been sleeved, representing almost 24% of all the water pipes under the city of Côte Saint-Luc. And if you look in terms of water main breaks, and I recall just emailing some of my fellow councillors, I remember 2011, for example, 2007 to 2011 were some very tough years. We averaged about 28.4, and I remember some years we went over 30 water main breaks. I remember some months I think we had 7 or 8 or 9. I think one month we even had 10 water main breaks in one month. Now we're averaging about 12 per year over the last several years. So I'm happy about that, and it's because of, again, the long-term investment and the great work of our engineering department to help us pick which pipes are the ones most in need. In terms of road resurfacing, this year we had planned on doing some road resurfacing. We weren't able to do it because the price of the tender came in a bit higher. So we're hoping next year we'll get the tenders out earlier, and we've allocated money again to repave Emerson and part of Smart from Mackle up sort of to Mather to where it hits Wolseley. In terms of sidewalk repair, we've done, in the last 4 years, we've done 8,450 meters of sidewalk, and again, our engineering department, our public works department has helped out as well, have gone through the city, mapping out the different sections of sidewalk that were in the worst shape, and every year within the city, you'll see, let's say roughly 1,000 to 2,000 meters of sidewalk are replaced and poured fresh concrete, and of course the goal is to make sure that all our residents are safe and can get through the city. In terms of traffic lights, we have a list here. So we have a few traffic lights that are being looked at. So we're looking at some work on Haywood, the Haywood Cavendish area for possible traffic light there. And in terms of LED lights, the goal is to have LED lights in every street light in the city within the next few years. So over the next few years, that will be one of our priorities to continue working on that. And professional services for the Côte Saint-Luc Road underpass. As you've noticed, we've redone, over the last few years, we've redone all the pump stations at the Côte Saint-Luc, the Westminster and Cavendish underpasses. In the last few years, we redid the Westminster underpass, the railing, the sidewalks. We redid it in Cavendish, the Cavendish underpass, and the next big one is the Côte Saint-Luc Road underpass, which is a major project which we'll be doing in conjunction with the City of Montreal. Parks and playground, the main priority is Kerwin Park. And again, the consultation happened last Thursday, and residents will see the work beginning in the spring of 2019. In terms of building local improvements, as mentioned earlier, the Confederation Annex will be done also starting as part of the project with the arena. For Public Works Yard, we have a dome that's going to be built. So this is going to be a large, very large tempo. And basically what it'll do is it'll enable our city workers, our blue-collar workers, to get going much quicker in the morning. It'll save them time on emptying, getting the snow off their vehicles, on warming up their vehicles, and it'll make us much more efficient. And there's a return on investment on that of about 5 or 6 years. We also are going to be returning the demo garden to the library, which was dismantled partly due to the work on the building envelope. We have a bit of an upgrade at the canteen. The canteen structure will have a new covering. There'll be some renovations to the urban development offices, including new floors, and new restructuring of the office entranceway, so it'll make it more, let's say, more customer service oriented for residents who want to visit, and professional services for the City Hall building envelope. This building has been, of course, is an amazing building, but we've had issues over the last few years with the bricks. We started with the cooling tower in the beginning, which was done as the first phase. The second phase was the library, and the next phase will be redoing all the bricks for the City Hall side. So that won't be done next year, but the professional services will be, so we can map out a timeline to get that done and to make sure that all the bricks are replaced as it was done in the other 2 phases. In terms of vehicles, one of the things we have been doing, and I saw a statistic about this recently, we went from, several years ago, we had one of the oldest fleets, the oldest average age for the fleets, to one of the most modern fleets. And I think one of the reasons, for example, our snow removal is so much better, I like to think, than in the other cities and our neighbors, is because over the last several years, we've invested money in new snow blowers. When I started, most of our snow blowers were from the 60s and 70s, and in the last few years, we've replaced all our snow blowers. So we have new snow blowers, new tractors that are attached to them, and we've managed to become much more efficient, much quicker, leaner in that sense, and I'm happy about that. And of course, every year we continue to replace some older vehicles. So you see a pickup truck, 2007, a cargo van, 2004. For the public security vehicles, I was talking to our director, Bryson. So each of these vehicles, although they seem relatively new, they're 2014-15 models, they are driven virtually 24 hours a day. So they have significant mileage. However, even though they are, let's say, retired from the public security fleet, they're repurposed and used by Public Works or Urban Planning or other departments with the city, so those vehicles get repurposed. We're replacing this year an EMS ambulance that's 11 years old. We have a 10-wheel dumper that's from 1993, and replacing some equipment, a tree trunk grinder that is from 2005, an asphalt box from 2002, and a small tractor that is 12 years old. So again, every year to try to make sure the fleet is optimized so that our city workers can do the best and, of course, not be spending too much time, hopefully, in the garage. And just to mention a few more items, our fuel management system. So since becoming a councillor, we've worked on making sure that our use of fuel is efficient. So this is a system that allows us to track the use. The old system is no longer as useful as it should be, so we're getting a new system. And it also includes some onboard tablets for public safety and an in-vehicle video system for public safety as well. In terms of IT, so we're doing a switching system upgrade. The city currently has 47 network switches, of which 27 of them are more than 4 years old, which in the age of network switches is very old. So the older switches have to be replaced to avoid any disruption which could affect all our city services. Security cameras, we have over 100 cameras in the city, of which 66 of them are more than 5 years old. And again, in terms of camera age, that's very old and resolution is poor, so we're replacing some of those. Microsoft Office licenses, we have about 140 licenses. So every year we replace about 35 of those. Computers, we'll be purchasing some new computers as we do every year. And server replacement, we have purchased a new virtualization, we're purchasing a new virtualization server to replace existing ones which are more than 3 years old. And again, in terms of server life, they're no longer under warranty and they no longer meet our needs, so they will be replaced as well. And this is just a general summary. So just to show, so this is 2019. We are also tonight adopting the 2020 and 2021, as we do every year. And I'll just show some highlights to mention. So this is a section for government grants. This coming year, 2019, as mentioned, is the first year of the new tech grant, the new gas tax grant that we get every year, which works out to about, over a 4-year period, it works out to about $9.5 million generally that we get. It's about $2.5 million a year. Usually in the first year we don't get as much because we don't yet know all the rules, so that's why we go a bit light on certain projects, and it balances out by the end of the 4th year. And just to mention a few things, even though tonight we do adopt the capital project budget, we still have to adopt each project individually, as was the case last year when we went out for tender for the price of roads. When the roads came in too high, we rejected the tender and decided not to do the roads. Same could be true if the price of a vehicle is too expensive, so we don't necessarily do it. And for 2020 and 21, of course, those are predictions. We try as much as possible to follow, but every year we do change it up. So you'll see this 2020 and 2021 will be slightly different next year when we present next year's budget. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Italy. Well done, as always. Good presentation. So I would like to thank Councillor Italy and more importantly, of course, our treasurer, Angelo Marino, and all of the directors and the managers. I see many that are here today who helped in this process. It's not an easy process to do a budget, so I want to thank you all for being here, for your support, and for all your participation in the process. And I'd also like to thank the residents that are here, particularly our regulars, like Tamar Hertz and Jeff Joseph. Thank you for being here. Of course, my wife, Elaine, who's always here. Thank you for all your support. And of course, our favorite resident, our Member of Parliament and former Mayor, Anthony Housefather. Thank you for being with us. So now if anybody has any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you for all the work that you've done on this budget. I have 2 questions. One is, last year you said the goal is to continue sharing more information with the residents about the budget. So compared to last year, how much more access to information from an open data concept will the residents have about this budget?
It's a good question. Well, first of all, the plan for this year again is, so we released the budget presentation. What we also started doing last year was releasing the budget in Excel format so that residents can, because when you get this version, the back end is Excel, but when you get it, I'll just show a slide. The back end is Excel, but when you get it, it's in a PDF, so you can't actually manipulate it. So what we've started doing is releasing Excel so residents can play with it. They can copy paste it, they can run formulas. Now, one of the other things that we are hiring as part of the budget is someone to work with the city and helping with our data wrangling, so to speak. So that's going to be a person that will help us be better at releasing more information. One of the dilemmas we have, and I've spoken to our treasurer, Angelo Marino, about this, is how to share more information without sharing the personal information or individual salaries of our employees. And that's always the dilemma. And so I hope is that working with this data wrangler, they'll be able to help us find ways to share more so that we can give more information to residents, but at the same time, maintaining the confidentiality of our staff and not sharing their individual salaries. Because some departments are, some departments have 100 employees and some departments have 2 employees or 3 employees. So we have to be careful when we're sharing that we don't disclose that information. But definitely, it is one of the priorities, and it's something we will be doing more of throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Our treasurer would like to add something. Go ahead.
Just wanted to mention, so we've been focusing on the operating side in 2018, but in 2019, we're also going to be putting on the website information about capital projects on Excel, so we'll be able to follow the projects that go through and do the numbers. So the operating report back twice a year, which will be at the end of May and September, and we show you, according to budget, how much we spent for each department. So it really, we are trying slowly to go to the concept and try to share more. So we will start to see the capital budget very soon.
Wonderful, thank you. My second question is regarding the revenues from the ACC. The number is down about $100,000. Is there,
So I'll share actually with so there's a few things that have affected. First, with regard to the ACC, one of the things we did was we moved the mini rec room outside of the ACC because we realized it was originally part of the ACC budget, so it was moved. Hold on, I'm gonna try to flip slides here. So the mini rec room was originally part of the ACC, and it's now moved to the recreation under.
And where's the arena revenue? Do you know what arena revenue is? Yeah, because it's going to go down, so where's it going down?
Yeah, just give me 1 second here.
Is that one of these?
So if you look here, for example, under expenses, so under expenses and revenue, it's actually been moved from the ACC to social cultural activities. So for revenue,
That's what so, look, is that item number 2 on page 13?
yeah,
And the arena reduction is under which item here? Because the reduction in arena revenue with the closure is also somewhere.
yeah, so I'll show you with the revenue first. So on the revenue side, so the revenue is down, if you see here. So it's actually been shifted both on the revenue side and on the expense side. So on the revenue side, the mini rec room has been shifted out of the ACC and into recreation. We also, though, we see a decrease on recreation, though, because we have much less income from the arena. So the arena is showing a significant drop in revenue because the arena is going to be closed for 3/4 of the year. And Kerwin, thank you. And Kerwin Park. And the pool, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the pool. Now, we also actually, though, on the recreation side, just on the ups and downs, on the recreation side, we have a slightly larger revenue item for the Dramatic Society because we're going to be having, I think, 1 extra play, if I recall, in 2019. So what you see for like I said, there's been a shift of the mini rec room, and then there's been a decrease on the revenue side from the arena, an increase on the recreation side because of the mini rec room, and an increase from the Dramatic Society. And if I switch to the expense side, you'll see that everything actually almost balances out. Just flipping to that slide.
And the difference in arena revenue is $200,000. So
Yeah.
it's pretty significant.
It's a $200,000 reduction in arena revenue because it's closed this year. But that's under the other category.
Yeah. So slide 23. So you see that the expenses, so actually here, it's subdivided even further. So the mini rec room is partly in here, and partly, though, because we have an extra play, we have an increase in the revenue side, but we also have an increase in the expense side for the extra play for the Dramatic Society.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so you can join us now for
Okay.
the next item on the agenda. So Councillor Erdely, item number 2 is the adoption of the budget for 2019. Councillor Erdely? Take your time.
As I'm pulling it up, I also want to say a special thank you to our treasurer, Angelo Marino, for all his hard work preparing the budget. And I want to say a special thank you to the council as well. I know, look, as a council, we don't always agree on every item, and I know it's not necessarily easy going through this process, but I think it's very nice when we can agree in general and hopefully find a way to agree on a budget for the most part.
Where's the resolution? I see the one, I see the resolution, it must be here, it must be here.
Yeah.
Here it is. Yeah, it's here, on the paper copy.
Oh, here, I have it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the pages back.
okay.
I have an
It's page 55 of the digital version.
Okay.
Be it resolved that Côte Saint-Luc City Council hereby adopts the 2019 operating budget as follows. Revenues of $72,793,010. Expenses and appropriations of $72,793,010 for a surplus or deficit of 0. And hereby annexed to the minutes to form an integral part of said document entitled Appendix 1.
Moved by Councillor Erdely, seconded by Councillor Burku. Any discussion? After the vote? Okay, all in favor? No? Why, what? Usually it's before the vote, that's when discussion is. So go ahead, Councillor Torchman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on a whole, I think the budget is great. I like many of the elements throughout the budget. I think it hits a lot of the obligations that the city has, and I think we're doing it's moving in the right direction. There's a few issues in it that I've been vocal about in committee, and I just want to be clear, my vote against the budget tonight is not a vote against the complete project, the complete budget, I mean. So I do appreciate the work that's been done. I think there's an issue with transparency on one particular issue. There's a blanket application of increases to salaries that I don't agree with, and the consistent increases to salaries need to be mitigated, and I don't think that's a well thought out plan. I think it affects the budget in the long term. You know, budgets don't balance themselves, and I think we need to be cautious about how we move forward. For that reason, I'll be voting against tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Torchman. Any further discussion? Councillor Erdely, would you, since your portfolio, would you like to respond to that?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to say is, you know, balancing the budget and doing the budget in general is not an easy task. Also, maintaining a city is not an easy task, and the city really is an amazing thing. It is because of the work of the employees, the ones who are here day to day. I have to admit, we come on evenings and we do our thing, but really it's the people that are in the trenches every day that are working those hours, and when it's a snowstorm, they're there in the middle of the night, and when it's time to pour water in an outdoor skating rink, they're there in the middle of the night doing it. First thing in the morning, end of the day, whatever time it is, and I think we really have to value our employees. And in particular, we have to look also at our management employees. What we've seen over the last few years is that a lot of our management employees we're getting just a bare cost of living adjustment, averaging roughly 1.3%, even actually possibly even below, slightly below the rate of inflation, depending on which indicator we use to look at. Whereas in the case of, let's say, unionized employees, or in the case of many employees, not only do they get a cost of living adjustment, they also get an echelon increase. If I can share on for example, as a former teacher, the way it works, teachers increase every year. They get a cost of living adjustment, but they also get what we call an echelon or step adjustment. So they increase at a higher step every year. What happened in the case of our management employees is they were just getting, for the most part, a cost of living and not getting that step. In the case of the step, it often, for unionized employees or for teachers, I can tell you, it was roughly 4% a year on top of the cost of living until you reach the maximum level for teachers, which is after 17 years, or step 17. What we saw is that our management employees were getting, just like I said, the basic cost of living. When we look at our employees, for example, if I look at our directors, the majority of them have been with us for many years. And if we look on averages, our average director has been with the city, let's say as an employee with the city, for almost 15 years, starting, of course, at probably a lower level, and in their capacity right now for an average of approximately 6 years. So these are employees that have been with us for many years, that have worked hard, but have not necessarily gotten increases. And if we compare ourselves to what the City of Montreal is paying, what other demerged cities are paying, we were, I don't want to say underpaying, but we were lowering the pay, or offering pays lower than some of the other cities. We felt we had to do something that was reasonable, and that's why what we've done, I think, is a small step to do that. Still managing to keep the budget balanced, managing to keep and even with the increase, I should say, we're still at the low end of the average compared to some of our neighboring cities. I think what we've done is fair. I think it's a reward to our employees to make sure that we retain them. To replace an employee, to replace a director, for example, estimates are that it takes about 6 months to replace a top director. And during that time, of course, the city is at a loss for, of course, for efficiency, and of course, it ultimately affects the services we pass on to the residents. So I respect Councillor Torchman, I respect his opinion. I humbly disagree, and I think this is an excellent budget, and I think it's one that will ensure that the city of Côte Saint-Luc is strong and continues to be strong moving forward.
Councillor Burko.
Yeah, so thank you. So ever since we demerged, it was about 2006, and at that time, our unionized employees were, through collective bargaining, since 2006, have gotten a series of increases, which resulted this year when we were presented with the situation that some of our management were not making as much as the unionized employees. And this was becoming a problem that, a manager was managing someone who was making a little bit more, or almost as much as they were. So that was one issue that was brought up. The other one was the past, well, it's 11 years now, 12 years since the demerger. We really didn't adjust the salaries. And we did it for managers, but only on an ad hoc or on a special, under special circumstances. And so we understood that when a new manager was hired, they sometimes would come in at a higher rate than someone who had already been there for a while. So in order to make it a better playing field, a fairer playing field for our managers and our directors, who've been with the city and are very dedicated and are very committed to doing the best job for the city, we were presented with a very detailed analysis of where the salaries were in regard to, the comparative cities across the board and the UMQ scales, and there were sort of the echelons were determined for us. And so we went through a very rigorous process. We went through all the different categories, through the directors, the managers, the different departments, and we analyzed this, and we came up with a formula, what was presented to us, a formula in order to allow the these managers and directors to go into their echelon, to be able to ultimately get to the maximum of their echelon, as well as the cost of living increase, and of course to continue to get their bonus. So we feel that this is fair, and ultimately, yes, it's generous in the sense that it's all coming this year, but we've adjusted to it. We've included it in the budget. We are cognizant of the fact that some managers and directors are going to reach their cap, and so ultimately they're just going to have the COLA increases. But we feel that this is very fair and very respectful of the employees that are running the city and doing the best for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I work for the public school board during the day, so I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not management, but nonetheless, I'm in the same boat as some of our employees, our management, and I know what it's like because we have council commissioners who work very hard and do a lot of hard work. As a councillor, I think it's a 24/7 job, but nonetheless, I'm not there 9 to 5. We're there in the evenings, we're working from home, we're working remotely, and I don't know in the 13 years I've been on council how many times I've been able to contact our senior management people during the day, during the evening, during the weekend, when they're on vacation. I feel very privileged to have the group we do, and I know what it's been like over the years when we have lost a key person, and I know what the fear that we've experienced when some of our key people have been in a position where we might have lost them, and some of them stayed, even though it cost them financially, but they stayed out of loyalty and they stayed out of dedication to our city. And we have one of the finest management teams right now. I speak loud enough anyhow. Yeah. But we have one of the finest management teams on the island, I think. Very proud of that. I feel very fortunate to have these people on board. And there's a cost to losing senior staff. You have to go out and get headhunters. There's an issue of morale. You don't know if you're going to replace them immediately. And that could make the difference between decisions regarding a major development or a major purchase. So I don't think we can afford not to make this move. I think we have to do the right thing. If we're going, people say Côte Saint-Luc is one of the best places to live in the island of Montreal, and that's a tribute to the team, the senior management, all of our staff, and I think our council. So I vote for this with great pride, Mayor, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Sabag.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to quickly explain my position in regards to this vote as well, and I do respect the vote and position of Councillor Torgman. Councillor Cohen mentioned management, and I am in management, so I believe enormously in employee and talent retention. It's an important part of making sure the city runs well. I've seen firsthand as a new councillor what an amazing team we have, working very hard day to day, making sure that our jobs are easier as well. I do believe that we went with a comprehensive way to ensure the salaries of our staffs represent the hard work they put in, but more importantly, this allows this council not to have to vote on the fly for salary adjustments. And that is a key component of why I'm voting yes on this budget. And I can go on record in saying that I do not want to be, and I want everybody to understand my position, if this council is presented with a salary adjustment or increase, whereas we're fearing someone leaving. I do not want to go through this again. I don't want to do this in committee, and I don't think it's fair to the residents. So I'm glad to vote yes for this. I'm glad The salary adjustment represents what you guys do every day, and I thank you personally for it.
Okay. Councillor Kajewski.
I have nothing to add to that. Orrin put it perfectly.
Okay. Councillor Ben-Isri.
Ok, merci Monsieur le maire. Moi, ce que j'aimerais dire, c'est juste, je pense que c'est important de maintenir un budget équilibré et je pense que depuis que je suis impliqué, et même avant ça, Côte Saint-Luc s'est toujours fixé comme objectif de maintenir un équilibre budgétaire. Et je me souviens quand je me suis lancé dans ma campagne, c'était quelque chose que j'avais vraiment analysé, le budget de Côte Saint-Luc avant de me lancer dans ma première campagne. Je pense ce qu'on a fait, je crois que c'était important d'apporter des changements par rapport à la rémunération de nos cadres. Ça faisait plus de 12 ans ou 13 ans que ça n'a pas été fait. Et c'est une façon finalement d'apprécier et de valoriser notre équipe de professionnels. Je sais que des fois on peut avoir des divergences par rapport entre conseillers, mais je pense que c'est un budget responsable et équilibré. Et j'aimerais vraiment remercier toute notre équipe professionnelle pour tout leur travail et leurs efforts. Merci.
Thank you. Okay, I also, from Councillor Kovac, she's away on her travels, so she's not able to be here, but she just wrote a note of her strong support for the budget and for the changes to the management plan and salaries. In terms of myself, I wanted everybody else to get a chance to speak first. I strongly support this budget. When I was first elected as mayor, I made it very clear that I believed that the entire staff of the city of Côte Saint-Luc had to feel appreciated and motivated in order to provide excellent work. And I was committed to settling the collective agreements for the blues, the whites, and the professionals. And we did so. And I think it was contagious in terms of the response from the residents and the feeling that they get when they go to the arena and they deal with the workers there, when they go anywhere in our city and they feel that appreciation from them. Because it is the residents of Côte Saint-Luc that are paying their salaries, and they know that. And they appreciate that they have a council that responds to an interest to make this like one happy family. But listen, as was already said by many of the councillors who've repeated the fact that since 2006 we haven't gone through this exercise, and there were subordinates that were being paid more than managers. There were many managers and directors that were being paid below the average of individuals with similar experience and in a same position working for other cities. So I want to be very clear that none of the salary adjustments went above the average. They weren't brought to the top, they were brought to the average of individuals in the similar position in another city. And those adjustments were significant. We lost people over the last number of years who left to work at other cities because of salary. I mean, they just left because of salary. And it's a little too late after they're gone. We need to go through the recruitment process and so on. And I want Côte Saint-Luc to be known at least as a city that pays the average. Not the top, but at least the average. So, and that obviously, if you're in a management position, you should be paid more than subordinates. I also wanted to point out some other points in this budget that I'm very proud of, besides our management policy and the salary adjustments that were made. I think it's great in terms of our capital projects. People really appreciate the fact that we're doing a major renovation of our outdoor swimming pool, and it should be known that that renovation is going to include handicap access, is going to have a wonderful play area for the kids, is having a deeper one side of the pool so that our competitions, which have now become so popular, we had an indoor competition with 1,000 people last weekend, so our outdoor pool is going to be state-of-the-art, and we're lucky to have a pool of that size. Very, very proud that we're also going to be doing our arena, and not only our arena, but also creating a second ice surface, which is in the annex, so they're going to have 6 more months, 6 months of the year guaranteed of time that they can skate on 2 surfaces, the outdoor one and the indoor one, which will also be screened, the outdoor one, and Kerwin Park. So in terms of our capital budget, I think we've done some wonderful things, which also include general maintenance and road reconstruction. But the quality of the services that the residents of Côte Saint-Luc are receiving and the facilities, we're keeping them up at number one. And the people that manage them, the people that work at them are also number one. So I want to thank you all for that, and I strongly support this budget, and I'm very pleased with the work that was done by this council and by our entire team. I look forward to working with you all for many years to come. And now that there's been all discussion, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? So carried with Councillor Torgman opposing. And now we move to item number 3, which is the adoption of the 3-year capital budget. Councillor Erdely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that the Côte Saint-Luc City Council hereby accepts and adopts the 3-year capital expenditure plan for the 2019, 2020, and 2021 years, totaling $33,503,300 plus applicable taxes, hereby annexed to the minutes to form an integral part of said document entitled Appendix 2.
Moved by Councillor Erdely, seconded by Councillor Burku. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried with Councillor Torgman dissenting. Okay, and now we move on to the adjournment.
Right, so I move to adjourn.
Seconded by Councillor Sabag. All in favor? And we are adjourned. And we will now move into our next meeting, which is a special meeting to be held today, dealing with several items. And we have that budget before you. Are there any questions on this budget, on this agenda? No. You have to go? Okay. All right, Councillor Kajaski has another very important engagement, so I'll let you go.
My daughter is 7 today.
Absolutely. Go and enjoy.
Happy birthday.
Don't miss your own daughter's birthday party. Item number 2, Councillor Erdely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hereby give notice of motion that bylaw 2528 to be entitled Bylaw Concerning Taxes and Tariffs of the City of Côte Saint-Luc for the fiscal year 2019 will be presented at a later meeting for adoption.
Okay, and the tabling?
And I hereby table draft bylaw 2528 to be entitled Bylaw Concerning Taxes and Tariffs of the City of Côte Saint-Luc for the fiscal year 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Erdely. Item number 3, Councillor Sabag.
Oh, just
Yeah.
to mention
Yep.
that it will be adopted on Wednesday at 6:30 for those that are available to come.
6:30. Thank you.
And that the object of the bylaw is to establish the taxes and tariffs for 2019.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Item number 3, Councillor Sabag.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that bylaw 2321-3 entitled bylaw 2321-3 amending bylaw 2321 entitled bylaw respecting speed in the streets in order to modify the speed limit on McDonald Avenue from 50 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour be and is hereby adopted.
Sorry, it's my mistake, 40 to 30.
I noticed that because
Yeah.
I was right on that street
40 to 30.
on Saturday and it was
It's my
40.
fault. It
So
should have said 40.
should I reread it or?
No, just say
No,
it,
it's
40
So
to
40
30.
to 30.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Sabag. Seconded by Councillor Benizri. Any discussion? This is just to harmonize the speed limit on McDonald so that it should be 30 throughout. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. And we move to the next item, item number 4, approval of a group insurance agreement concerning skate parks. Councillor Burku.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Considering Article 29.9.1 of the Cities and Towns Act, the City of Côte Saint-Luc wishes to join the Union des Municipalités du Québec, as well as its current group, the group for which it already is a party, for the common purchase of liability insurance for its skating park between 2019 and 2024. Be it resolved that the Côte Saint-Luc Council hereby authorizes the City of Côte Saint-Luc to join the group purchase of the Union des Municipalités du Québec in view of authorizing a contract concerning liability insurance for its skating park situated within its territory, the terms of which shall be between the period of May 1st, 2019 and April 30th, 2024. Authorize any of the following individuals, Mayor Mitchell Brownstein, Jonathan Schechter, City Clerk, Andrea Charon, General Counsel, to sign any agreement with the Union des Municipalités du Québec and other members of the group on terms substantially similar to a document entitled Agreement Relating to a Grouping of Municipalities Concerning the Common Purchasing of General Liability Insurance for Skate Parks and BMX Facilities. Annexed to this resolution is Annex A to form an integral part thereof, as if cited hereinafter at length.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Councillor Burko. We need a glass
Of
of water
water.
for Councillor Burko.
Yeah, definitely, okay.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Burku, seconded by Councillor Cohen. Any discussion?
Yeah, so it's just to explain that the city's required to sign a contract, which is beyond the scope of 1 year, so we're signing for 5 years. And the contract is pursuant to the Cities and Towns Act, which requires the council's authorization to
Correct.
sign. And so that's why we're doing it by resolution. It's not a major expense,
It's very
but it's because of the legal requirements for
Correct.
the group insurance. Thank you.
So moved by Councillor Burku, seconded by Councillor Cohen. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. And now we move to item number 5, Councillor Burku.
Okay, so this is a long list. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it,
Yeah,
so
we need
maybe
somebody-
someone else who
maybe-
can read it, because
Yeah, it's true,
I'm
your
losing
voice
my
isn't good.
voice.
Councillor Erdely? Okay. Councillor
Sorry.
Erdely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that for the 2019 fiscal year, the City Council approves the following pursuant to a non-interest-bearing loan from its working fund for the following projects. Switching system upgrade to a maximum of $45,000 plus applicable taxes to be advertised for over a period of 5 years. Security camera systems up to a maximum of $15,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized for over a period of 5 years. Microsoft Office licenses up to a maximum of $14,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Computers up to a maximum of $25,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Server replacement up to a maximum of $17,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Demo garden installation of stone patio up to a maximum of $15,500 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Onboard tablets/computers up to a maximum of $20,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. In-vehicle video systems up to a maximum of $40,000 to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Public Works yards exterior lights up to a maximum of $11,500 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Canteen shading outdoor structure for the pool up to a maximum of $17,800 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years. Arena Confederation Annex equipment upgrades up to a maximum of $100,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 10 years. And urban development renovations up to a maximum of $80,000 plus applicable taxes to be amortized over a period of 5 years, that the city shall provide every year out of its general fund a sum sufficient to repay the various loans back into the working fund. So just to mention, this reiterates some of the projects that I had discussed earlier in the evening. What this means is rather than borrowing money, so we are basically borrowing from ourselves at zero interest, and it makes more sense for the city to save on the interest and borrowing costs. So generally for smaller projects, and these are projects that for the most part we should be able to complete within the 2019 calendar year.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously.
Seconded by,
It was seconded by Councillor Burku.
perfect. And just a very friendly syntactical amendment. When we say in the first paragraph, for the following projects, I'm also going to write the words "and for the following terms," because each project has its own term. So just to clarify, if council doesn't mind.
Thank you, Maitre Schechter. So if there's no other business, I call for adjournment. Councillor Burku, seconded by Councillor Torgman. All in favor? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.